Through politics, I got appointed to the Panama Canal Commission. I was one of the final 5 American board members of the binational committee, the Commission on the Panama Canal, which oversaw the historic transition of the canal to Panama. And I just recently returned from Panama on a trip down there for the 100th anniversary of the Panama Canal. And was earlier mentioned by a speaker, the Panama Canal and the Port of Houston have a lot in common. They're both celebrating their 100th anniversary. That's why I was down in Panama August 15th. They both are approximately 50 miles long. They were both built by the American government or helped by the American government for the same purpose, to create trade opportunities and to expand the ability for trade. Now, Silvia deMarucci, who is here to speak to you about the Panama Canal and the way it interfaces with this region, is a very, very important executive with the Panama Canal Authority, the successor entity which for the last 15 years has been doing a fantastic job, in my humble opinion, of running the canal, at the same time building the new set of locks that are in Panama today, and I think in 2016 are scheduled to begin to actually open maybe late 2015. How many of you in this room have been to Panama? Well, you've got a crowd that then has a great appreciation for what's going on in Panama. Ms. deMarucci, who's going to speak to us, graduated with honors and BA in the major economics and minor in marketing from Concordia University in Montreal, Canada. She has a master's in business administration from Nova University in Panama itself. Her previous experiences at the Panama Canal have been extensive in the management and marketing of the canal, but even before that, she has quite a background in trade and trade issues, bulk issues at the canal and in Panama. She's currently the executive in charge of market analysis and forecasting at the Panama Canal Authority. She performs in-depth analysis of transportation, supply chains, and international markets in connection with canal traffic, with emphasis in the oil and petrochemical sectors. Her responsibilities include the development of the market demand forecast, pricing strategies, and analysis of competitors for the Panama Canal route. She is one of the few really official spokespeople for the canal. She has published papers in very noted international journals about the canal and marketing, and I think what she's going to discuss today is and should be of interest not just to the people in this room, but this region, because as the canal expands, we're looking at increasing the depth of the Houston Ship Channel to accommodate the bigger ships that are coming through the canal, and that expansion for us, if we have the infrastructure, meaning the rail and the highway infrastructure to take advantage of that expansion, can mean, in my opinion, more to this region than any place but Panama itself. And with that, Ms. deMarucci, thank you.
I'm going to stand over here so I'm too short to see the screen. First of all, let me thank you for inviting me to be here with you on such a special time. Before I begin, I would like to congratulate the Houston Ship Channel on its 100th anniversary. As you know, we have been celebrating our 100th anniversary as well. And I probably, just like you, we have been celebrating for maybe over a year now. Every month we have something special to do. So today I'm here to make a reflection on what the last century has been, and to talk to you a little bit more about what the next 100 years are going to be like. So this is, okay, that's me. And I'd like to begin by saying that at the beginning of the 20th century, agriculture, timber, and ranching were the economic engines of Texas. This all changed when the discovery of a large petroleum reserve was found in Beaumont, and that just triggered industrialization. The construction of the Houston Ship Channel was, in 1914, triggered the development of the Port of Houston and turned it into the most important port in the state and became the center for shipping cotton. With the large amount of the large amount of oil and gas that was developed at that time, the whole region in Houston and Beaumont became the economic engine then. And many refineries started to proliferate around the Houston and Beaumont area, but soon they grew to the rest of the state. And the whole region attracted a lot of economic development, and to the point that in the 1930s, Houston was known as the city that the Great Depression forgot. And I think we are looking at similar patterns nowadays. And with the construction of the Panama Canal, parallel to the opening of the Houston Ship Channel, the canal enabled this trade of this renaissance industry in gas and oil for the United States to move its oil and petroleum products from one coast to another. So we saw a lot of intercoastal movements back then. The canal impacted not only the Texas region, but with the first transit of the Ancom steamship in 1914, we actually changed the shape of seaborne trade. And I have to say that you probably are in contact with the Panama Canal on everyday basis when you watch the news, when you enjoy a nice glass of Chilean wine. Probably that TV set, that Chilean wine, and even that cup probably made its way to your home going on board of a ship that transited the Panama Canal. So let me talk to you about the impact of the Panama Canal in global trade throughout the years. We divide this impact in five main phases. And the first one starts in 1914 through 1945, when the canal actually fulfilled the role it was built to play. It was a military strategy, and we saw warships transiting the waterway, as well as commodities going for war during that time. In addition, we saw a lot of petroleum products and petroleum moving through the waterway at the time. After that, between the 1950s and 1960s, is a period in which the canal strengthened its position as a link for trade, and we saw the surge in Japanese goods moving through the waterway, and Japan became, surprisingly, the #2 user of the waterway. After that, between the 1960s and 1990s, we saw the changes in the maritime industry. We saw the specialization in vessels. We started to see the first chemical vessels transiting the waterway, the first vehicle carriers, the first container cargoes. Until then, it's still grain was the #1 product transiting the waterway. Later on, after 1999, but before 2006, is a very important period for us because it marked the transition of the Panama Canal to the Panamanian government, and also had the canal facing the full impact of globalization. China entered the OMC, and it became then our #2 customer at the Panama Canal. It's important to say that it was the time that we had to make important decisions on whether or not to expand the waterway to serve trade. Finally, from 2006 till today, the canal has begun to do this expansion that was planned, and it's interesting to say that a day like yesterday, 7 years ago, we began the project with our first explosion at the Culebra Cut. Even though the canal is no stranger to market fluctuations, you can see in this graph that the trend has been towards an increasing amount of tonnage transiting the waterway. For those of you who don't know Panama, this is Panama City, my hometown and also the capital city of one of the most thriving Latin American economies. It has a GDP growth of 7.5% for the last decade, and we have a GDP of $38 billion with a small population of 3.5 million people. Inflation rate is 4%, and our unemployment rate is currently at 4%. Just as the Houston Ship Channel has brought progress to your region, the Panama Canal also has brought progress to our country. And today we can say that about 26% of the GDP in the country is generated by the Panama Canal and all the activities associated to the transiting of vessels, ship chandling, bunkering, logistics, ports, etc. Let's take a closer look at the Panama Canal. Today, the Panama Canal handles about 3% of the total seaborne maritime trade. For some, because of our geographical location, the canal is more beneficial to some commodities than to others. For instance, we handle 10.6% of seaborne trade in grain, and that is basically due to the fact that the United States is one of the main exporters of grain, and the way through to Asia is the shortest route is through the Panama Canal. So we also serve 5.8% of the chemical industry, as well as 4.7% of the container cargo moving by sea. Last year, in 2013, it is important to say that 136 million tons moved between either an origin or a destination in the United States. And this is what continued to maintain your country as our #1 users throughout all this century. It's important to mention that out of the total cargo that moved through the Panama Canal, 37% moves within the most relevant route, which is east coast of the United States and Asia. Now, looking at the types of cargo that move through the waterway, we see that containerized cargo is the #1 commodity through the canal, followed by crude and petroleum products, then grain, we have coal and coke, ores and metals, and petrochemicals. If you see this chart, this represents about 80% of our total cargo, and what we have never seen through the Panama Canal is natural gas, which we are looking forward to seeing once our project is complete. I have to confess that back in 2006, when we were doing all the market studies and demand forecast, we never saw it coming that LNG would be a major product through the waterway. In terms of chemical products, we see a mix of products that move through the canal. And if you look at this mix, you will see some petrochemicals and some liquefied gases. So that means that the mix of vessels that we see carrying these petrochemical products is very varied. You have LPG carriers, you have chemical carriers, and you also have product tankers moving these types of cargoes. And what we see here is that it's obvious the great increase in tonnage that we have seen in propane and butane. And we have also a number of xylene, ammonia, ethylene, ethanol, caustic soda, ethylbutyl ether, which is very interesting to me, benzene, styrene, and sulfuric acid. I would say that it is very hard to follow this petrochemical and chemical industry because there are a wide variety of products to track. However, I have chosen the ones that represent the largest volumes through the waterway. It's a market segment that represents 13% of our total tonnage. Now, just to give you an idea of the routes that these petrochemicals follow, well, we have xylene moving in the main route between the Gulf of Mexico and South Korea and China. Then you have ethylene moving from the Gulf of Mexico again, to South Korea and China. And it's important to mention that in this route in particular, the Panama Canal can save up to 11 days of voyage compared to the alternative route through the Suez Canal or through the Cape of Good Hope. Then we have benzene that is moving on the opposite direction, at least in 2013, from South Korea into the Gulf of Mexico and from Japan. Here are the distance savings, and you can see the days that you save, depending on the speed of the vessel, of course, but it's basically 11 days. For ethylbutyl ether, the main route is the Gulf of Mexico into Japan. And we have seen this growth suddenly appear because it was not a product that was moving historically through the waterway. Caustic soda, you have routes from the Gulf of Mexico into New Zealand and into Chile. And finally, propane, which is moving into Panamax LGCs, or large gas carriers, that is moving between the Gulf of Mexico into Panama and into Japan, and also from Norway to Guatemala. We see historically or traditionally movements of propane and butane, mostly propane, moving in regional areas. We see it within the continent. But this year, and probably beginning in 2013, we saw longer hauls of propane moving from the Gulf of Mexico into Asia. And we have seen interesting operations of ship-to-ship transshipment to load a large VLGC on the Pacific side to make its way through to Japan. So these are some of the changes that we have seen after the United States became a net exporter of petroleum products. So what is our value-added service? Our value proposition for shippers and ship owners is basically relies on 4 components. It's our reliability, our sustainability, our connectivity, and with the expansion of the Panama Canal, we will be also offering economies of scale. Let's take a look at reliability. The canal has always been open 365 days a year. It's open every day, every week. We hardly ever close. We have a very safe and secure environment. Vessels transit without any problems, and we have a 98% of satisfaction from our captains that transit the waterway. They are satisfied with the service that they are receiving. The canal does not allow strikes by law, so they are forbidden. And in history, we have only seen 2 closures in the last 50 years. And one of them was in 1989, when the US invaded Panama to oust Noriega. We closed 29 hours. And later on December 8, 2010, we had to close because of an out-of-the-ordinary rain that flooded the canal, and we had to close for 17 hours, which I think is a pretty good record for a plant that has been open for 100 years. It's also predictable. You will know exactly what you're going to pay for the service provided. We publish our rates, and we don't honor any special treatment to anybody. Everybody will pay the same. And because of our reservation system, we ensure that the vessel can transit at the time that it's planned to transit and will be at the port of destination on the date established. So if it is a liner service, it will be able to meet its schedule. For sustainability, as you know, the Panama Canal is an old plant, and we can handle about 320 to 330 Panama Canal tons. This, in order to ensure the sustainability of the canal through the years to come, we have engaged in a $5.25 billion investment program to enlarge the canal with a 3rd set of locks. This will double our capacity to about 600 million Panama Canal tons, and this will be very useful for the increasing trend in vessel size. The program components, as you can see here, are mainly, well, if you look at this is a map of Panama and the canal zone. To your top end is the Atlantic side, and in the bottom is the Pacific side. So within these 80 kilometers, you will have, we are building two sets of locks, one on the Atlantic and one on the Pacific. We are also building the entrances to the Pacific access channel to the lock on the Pacific side. We are deepening and widening the Atlantic and Pacific entrances. And if you look at the middle side, you will see that we are also widening and deepening the navigational channels that are the same navigational channels that we use today. But we are increasing their draft so that we can store more water, and we are also enlarging the navigation channels so that we can receive larger vessels. In addition, we also need to increase the maximum operational level of the Gatun Lake, which provides water to the whole system. And this is done by dredging from 26.7 meters to 27.1 meters. The new locks have a feature that is new to the existing canal. It has a water-saving system, which means that if you look at the lock chamber there, each shade of blue represents 20% of the water required to transit a vessel. So when the vessel enters the chamber, 20% of the water moves to one of the water-saving basins, another 20% to the next, until we get 60% of the water safe to be recycled and reused. Once the vessel transits, the water is returned to the chamber in order to receive another vessel, and is refilled with water from the lake or from the previous chamber. So in this way, even though this lock is so much larger than the existing one, we will be saving 7% of the water in each lockage. Well, I have brought a video because I am sure that my voice can make you sleepy, especially after lunch. So I brought a video that illustrates much better than whatever I can tell you about the expansion progress of the program. If you could please play the video for me. Well, the expansion program is about 80% complete, and we are, not anymore. It's about 80% complete, and we are shooting to complete the whole program by the end of next year. We should be operational the first quarter of 2016, and we're looking forward to receiving all the new vessels that will carry all the new cargo. In terms of connectivity, it is important to say that the canal today links 144 maritime routes, over 1,700 ports, and 160 countries. And this just means that once the canal is expanded, we can increase our operational level and probably increase the number of ports and the number of countries that we touch. What does it mean to the petrochemical industry? Well, I like to show this map because I think it's the most popular map in the last 5 years. I see it everywhere, and it's very self-explanatory. I know that thanks to the horizontal fracking technology, we woke up one morning and just to realize that we were back in 1885 when all the oil developments in Titusville was taking place, with the only difference that this time it is all about methane. And these large volumes of methane that you are producing at the tight oil has turned the United States into a major product exporter of petroleum products. And it's given also the massive opportunity to the US petrochemical industry to gain renewed access to comparably cheaper feedstock. This is very important. You have seen it from much better qualified people who have told you the same. And today we see that the Dow Chemical already announced plans to increase its ethane cracking plant in the Gulf Coast by 20 to 30%. You have also seen the Bayer Material Sciences interested in hosting an ethane cracking plant in the West Virginia. And it's not only ethane, it's also all the developments of new crackers plant for ethylene, which most of them are right here in Texas. The same is true for polyethylene projects. And we are also seeing expansion of petrochemical plants. We have seen the amount of money that is being invested in these expansions and these new developments. And the beauty of the petrochemical industry is that it doesn't have to wait for the expansion of the canal to flourish. The vessels that move these types of products already do it in handy-size and handy-max chemical carriers and product tankers. So really, this is a typical size of vessel for a chemical carrier and fits perfectly through the existing locks. So for them, and for all the users that remain a Panamax or smaller vessel, the canal has been investing since the transition in 1999 over $2.7 billion to make sure that the existing canal remains competitive and in excellent condition so that it can receive these vessels. And the existing canal will remain open after we inaugurate the new locks, so that you can be sure that our system will be serving not only the post-Panamax vessels, but will be serving all of the vessels that would need to transit the canal. And in addition, with the expansion program, what we intend to give you is to eliminate any waiting time or congestion that we could have due to that our capacity is almost reaching to the maximum level. We are well aware that the industry also needs post-Panamax vessels. So in this picture, I can show you the comparison of the Panama Canal existing locks and the new locks, and the size of vessels that it will be able to handle. I will tell you that it will allow a vessel that is 1,200 foot long by 160 foot wide and will allow 50 foot draft. But really, if I tell you that the height of the lock is about an 11-story building, and that it could accommodate the Empire State Building horizontally, I think you get a better picture of the size of the lock. This is perfect for a 13,000 to 14,000 TEU vessel, but it's also perfect for a dry bulker that is about 170,000 deadweight tonnage. It's perfect for an LNG vessel of 180,000 cubic meter. Even if these ideas or projects of exporting crude oil from the Gulf of Mexico turn to materialize, it will be able to handle Suezmax crude carriers of 150,000 deadweight tonnage. They are also perfect for a VLGC vessel, which is the larger gas carriers that we will be able to handle for LPG. And as I told you, the trend is towards increasing their export volumes. As I mentioned before, the ethane crackers are being planned for Texas and for West Virginia. And you can see in this chart the cost advantage of producing ethylene using ethane versus using other feedstocks. And since it seems that you will be producing much more than you really will need, there is an important, is an important potential that can be materialized for exports moving to Asia or moving into Europe. We don't like it to move to Europe because then you don't need to go through the Panama Canal, but we cannot have it all. But it is interesting to see how the shale gas has made so much impact, not only on the development of the industry, the petrochemical industry, and even the improvements in emissions to the environment, but also into the shipping lines. We are looking at the potential with the massive ethane exports that we are planning, that new vessel designs will appear. And this is a conceptual design of a very large ethane carrier, which by the dimensions that are shown, is going to be similar to a VLGC vessel, about 80,000 cubic meters, and is also perfect for the new locks. I have to say that history tends to repeat itself. And here we are today, once again, facing the challenge of increasing our capacity for the increasing trade that we are looking at. I am very optimistic that as we were successful 100 years ago, we will continue to be successful today. So thank you very much, and happy birthday.
We have time for a couple questions. If we have any. I thought it was a fantastic presentation. Let's give her another hand. And let me emphasize one thing that wasn't mentioned too, the predictability of the canal is very, very important. She mentioned that. But Panama and the canal has a dollar currency. So unlike many other places around the world, you know exactly what something's going to cost you going to Panama or going through the canal. And that is a tremendous advantage for us here in this region as we deal with the rest of the world, I think, not just in petrochemical, but in other types of trades that can go through the canal and come here, leave here, go through the canal. So with that, thank you very, very much, Ms. deMarucci. We really appreciate you coming. And any of you that want to go to Panama, they have tremendous tours of the canal. We can help coordinate that if you so desire. Thank you.
From the Infinity Group, please, ma'am, if you wait just a moment. From the Infinity Group, I'd like to introduce, lost my place, huh? How about that? Roger Blackburn. That's two, right? I got one more coming. Roger Blackburn from the Infinity Group. Roger, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I shared with you prior to this time at the podium the areas of our company, what we perform and what we're able to do. But yet Infinity is much more than that. When we talk about Infinity, we're talking about safety. A leader among the industry and being able to provide a safe workplace and environment for our workers. But not only in the area of safety, but also in education. We're privileged to be able to chair or be part of the educational process of seeing many of those and building many of them for the future. This conference is an empowering conference. And the reason that it's so empowering is because it's from all levels: government, industry, education, organization, businesses, both large and small. Infinity wants to express our thanks to the Economic Alliance for the privilege of sharing in this great conference, and also to thank our panelists and our guests. Ms. deMarucci, we appreciate so much you coming and sharing with what you have done today. And because of that, we have a small token here at the front, a gift from the Infinity Corporation, the Economic Alliance, saying thank you. Would you give her a round of applause? And all of our guests and our panelists today, we appreciate you for the influencers you are. Thank you.